Hello and welcome to another Building the Old World video. Today I am joined by the mighty Mediocre modeler, my friend Lee. He is an expert in all things Mordheim, or at least is as close as I have to an expert in all things Mordheim. And he is joining me as I build my first warband for Mordheim in about 20 odd years. So, hi Lee.
Hello.
Do you want to just briefly introduce yourself, tell everyone a little bit about you?
Yeah, so as you said, I go by Mediocre Modeler. I do a lot of painting and commission stuff there. I also run a venue down in Bristol, the Bristol Gaming Collective.
Which I'm going to come and game at some point, if nothing else,
yes,
get some games of Mordheim in.
Well, so that's where we sort of tangentially link into this, is we as a venue have hosted at least 3 Mordheim events now, one-dayers. About 6 games in a day. Some had loose narrative, some had very, very, very strong narrative. We've also done 3 proper campaigns and then sort of an open play thing as well.
Do you have a website? You showed off the name of the club there. Have you got a website that I can throw in the description for people?
So on Insta as bristol.gaming.collective, and then everything's linked from there.
What I'll do then is if I throw the link into the description for this video, then next time you've got a Mordheim event on, anyone who's watching this in the UK going, God, I love Mordheim, can go, ooh, cool, there's a Mordheim event we can go to.
Yep, yeah, and we're active on Facebook as well as the Instagram, and through there we link our Eventbrite where our tickets go on sale. So if you follow that as well, then you get all the reminders and all the plugs.
Cool. What I'll do is I'll throw links to all of that into the description so that anyone who wants to come to one of your Mordheim events in the future can do so. And I will also throw a link to your painting service, because that's the other thing that you do. Yep.
And yeah, my sort of goal with that one is, whilst I'll consider almost all commission stuff, I tend to focus more on the upper tabletop standard side of things. So big bulk jobs at fairly reasonable prices rather than high-end display stuff.
Cool.
Tends to be my go-to these days.
Well, let's dive into some Mordheimy stuff. So the general idea behind this video is, as I said, I'm going to build my first Mordheim warband in about 20 years. The last time I played Mordheim was when I was a staff member down at GW Swansea, and we had a Mordheim campaign running, and I ran an undead warband. But I have got, from my bits box, as I mentioned in my previous video, a stack of plastic gold, namely the Human Mercenary sprue, also known as the Free Company sprue, which they came in the original Mordheim box. And to supplement this, I've got quite a few bits and boosts. They're not all complete. I mean, they're missing bits. But yeah, I've got more than enough, I think, here to build myself a Mercenary Warband. And then to supplement that, I've got a few bits from my bits box. I've got some of the plastic Empire command sprues, which I thought might be quite cool to make slightly more martial captain or a hero or something like that for the warband. And I got a few metal bits and bobs as well. I've got some metal young bloods, one with a spear and some long hair, one with a kind of a bowl cut and a basket on his back, which I thought might be cool to throw in there as well. And then just to finish it off, I've got a few bits and pieces from my bits box that, again, I just thought were useful stuff. So little things like throwing knives or a little shield, just stuff that I thought would be cool to kind of make the models unique. Finally, I've got the classic requirement: square bases.
Nice.
So the general plan
for a conversation with Mordheim.
Square bases versus round bases. I am unsure about that. That is something we will have to cover. At the moment, I'm going square bases because I'm hoping that when the old world comes out, I'll be able to use Free Company or something in my Empire army, and I figured that way these models can do double purpose. General plan is let's have a bit of a natter about all things Mordheim, and I will pick Lee's brain on what sort of stuff I should be arming my mercenary gang with. So without further ado, I'm going to break out the clippers, and I think at the very least I can start building some bodies while we talk Mordheim.
So bodies, just have at them,
Exactly. Well, I think before we start equipping it with weaponry, I can add some torsos, clean those up, throw some legs on, and yeah. So you said you've run 3 single standalone event days.
Yes, yeah. So one of them was fairly standard out of the box Mordheim across the day, just a series of link days. There was some loose custom scenarios written for certain tables because rather than trying to fudge some of the scenarios onto terrain tables that may not work for them, that sort of thing, We kind of set all the tables in advance, and then certain tables were like, this is kind of these scenarios. Then the guy who co-ran them with me, he took point on the next two and put a lot of work in and did some really cool narrative one. So the second one had loads of narrative. Each table had a custom mission, and he tried to make sure that no one played the same mission twice or the same opponent, sort of rotated around.
Were they all set in the City of the Damned itself, or did he do any of them set in kind of the wider empire or the wider old world?
So the first one we did was fairly trad Mordheim, for lack of a better word. You know, it was crumbly down buildings.
Not prog Mordheim.
Yeah. It was crumbly down buildings. It was, even the bits that were a bit more open were still very empire. It was all very, very standard. Then the second one we did a really cool thing where each table was somewhere around the old world.
Okay.
So we had a map of the whole Warhammer world up on the wall, and each table corresponded to a point around it. And the loose narrative for that was each of you was working for a paymaster who was like, go and find me the stuff around.
Oh, okay.
Which allowed us to have individual themed boards, which were quite cool. You know, we had one board set just north of Prague, so on the edge of the realm of chaos. So things were getting, that board had loads of weird random happenstance and portals and stuff. One set in a wine cellar in the Moot, because halfling wine. It just allowed for a bit of variance with the board styles and that sort of thing, just a bit of quirkiness. Okay. And then the third one he did was, I can't remember the exact name of the event, but the entire thing was Albion themed.
Oh, did that tie into your 6th edition fantasy event?
Yeah, it sort of sat alongside that. It's kind of what, me talking about the 6th ed fantasy event I ran set in Albion, was kind of what gave him the spark to be like, we could do more time than that. So
Lee and I have a friendly disagreement about which version of old fantasy is better. I say 5th, he says 6th.
It's 6th. It's 6th.
You wait till you come to Return to the Badlands, you will clearly see why 5th is far superior.
I mean, I am working on a 5th ed army, so in 5th ed style.
So did you use the same warband for each of the 3 weekends, or did you do a different one for each event?
So I did different ones for each one. We allowed people the option to carry them over, but we implemented some quite hefty bonuses for people who went up against a very, very strong warband, which basically kind of the implication was it incentivized you to not bring previous warbands and to bring a new one each time.
That's a cool way of doing it. So not penalties, but giving like a positive
the person
encouragement.
Receiving end of it, yeah. For the campaigns we're running, especially the one I'm running at the moment, which I'll come to in a sec, I've added in even more benefits for rating difference, because rules as written, it's just you get a bunch of XP, which doesn't help you during the game.
No.
You still get beaten to a pulp, and at the end of it's like, well, at least we learned from that getting to a pulp hurts.
Those of us who survived have learned a valuable lesson.
Yeah, but it tends to mean, if you go up against someone with a rating that's twice yours, you're going to get such a kicking that the XP and what little money you earn from the game is not going to account for the brutality you suffered.
So what warbands did you run for it?
So I personally ran. I'm just looking at my cabinet now. Oh, I did Norse.
Okay.
They're quite good fun for one day, because they're basically a human warband, but significant, like almost no range stuff. But they start out a little bit stronger, a little bit higher weapon skill. So they just start out like fightier humans, kind of, with access to dogs as well. And I'm a sucker for a warband with dogs.
Okay.
So I did Norse for the first one. For the second one, the Settled World, I did a possessed warband, because I've been wanting to try and get my head around making possessed work for a long time, because they don't. But I used all the new 40k chaos cultists, and the big gribbly spawn things and stuff.
Oh, cool! The stuff that's in the War of Faith. Basically, the Silent War box set that they've just put up on pre-order.
Yes.
All the cultist stuff that's in there.
That exact set. I used all them, and I did a Sin City style paint job on them.
Oh, cool! So you did the kind of grayscale, but with splashes of color.
Yeah, and rather than doing grayscale, it was that like sharp layered highlights up through.
Okay.
So the very cartoony, like rather than I'll use literally the image of myself right here as the obvious thing. So rather than like shadow back here through to the light, it would be like a line there, black past there, and then a stripe of grey, and then stripe of white kind of thing.
Are there pictures of them on your Instagram?
On my Insta and on my Facebook page, yes. My Facebook page is pretty easy to find them because they're in a folder called Mordheim Warband. And the Sin City Star Possessed, while we're on those, just to gently nudge back to the bases mentioned earlier, I did them on hexes. Just to be contrarian.
So, I mean, rounds I can get because a lot of the models I've seen people using for Mordheim are some of the really awesome kind of Underworlds models. Like, I mean, if you want to do a Witch Hunters Warband now, you would just use the new Warhammer Underworlds Witch Hunters models because they're beautiful.
Yeah, they're just Warband, yeah.
Likewise, I suspect I'm resisting the urge to loot a whole bunch of the Skaven Assassin models from the new Warhammer Underpants Skaven Warband because they would look amazing in an action warband.
Underworlds and Warcry basically have just allowed Mordheim that more affordable and accessible than it was when Mordheim was active, which is great because it means we've got, for all our events, it's not just people like us who remember Mordheim from back in the day. We've got new people who are only 20 years old coming and playing Mordheim with us.
Not just those of us who've let our beards grow long.
Yeah, to hide the chins.
But so I can understand round bases for that. But I mean, square bases feels, I don't know, it feels more Mordheim, even though probably round bases actually, much like Necromunda, round bases make a lot more sense for a skirmish game.
Yeah, weirdly, Munda would actually make more sense on squares, and Mordheim makes more sense on circles because Mordheim doesn't have facing.
I was going to say facing. Yeah.
So like Munda should actually be on squares for mechanics purposes. Mordheim should actually be on circles for mechanics purposes. But from Thomas himself has said it doesn't matter.
Well, who are we to argue with the Dark Prince?
Yeah, his exact word. Well, I'll paraphrase, but what he said was basically they were on squares at the time of release because that's what fantasy was on. He would have liked it to have been circles when he made the game.
Okay,
but it mechanically doesn't matter. Was his that's the answer from the man up top. So that's why I did hexes for an event.
Did he do that? Did he say that in like a blog or? I mean,
I think in the Mordheim Facebook group because the argument pops, and he basically went, "Look, stop it. It's this."
I do like it when the creators of the old games actually get involved.
Yeah, like there's a point. There's on Broheim, which I use for all my resource. There's various FAQs. They're like official FAQs that were in like White Dwarf or Town Crier. Then there's like official FAQs that were on the GW website back in the day. And then there's like unofficial FAQs, which are, Thomas or Gav or someone has said on a social media somewhere, and they've gone, "It's this. Stop being stupid." And those
Everyone
are now taken.
Behave.
Those are taken as verbatim, which is pretty cool. It's almost like there's more active support for the game now than there was when it was active, which is cool.
It's very cool. So, what was your third warband? We heard you did Cult of Possessed, you did Norse. What was the third warband?
So the third warband was more a traditional warband. I did Witch Hunters because years back I'd done Witch Hunters at a campaign at my old gaming club back up in London. Mm-hmm. And I'd run them for like 3 campaigns in a row. And basically, I felt like I cracked the algorithm of how to play Witch Hunters. Like with every warband, there's kind of there's a right and a wrong way to play them, but then there's also like an extra layer to the right thing of just like, even from the start, the correct way to approach that. And with some warbands, that's fine. With some, once you crack that, you kind of almost, Mordheim's not the game to be meta and broken. So you kind of feel like you've kind of done it wrong by being almost too good with it. With Witch Hunters, I cracked it, and I threatened to the guys at the club, like, don't make me bring the Witch Hunters out. So I did for that one-day event, which was nice because it got me to finally finish painting them after 15 years. They were, before the event, they were only half painted. Because I basically pretty much retired them.
But those were the classic metal Witch Hunter models then?
No, so they were Plastic Empire Flagellants. My Zealots were made from the same kit you're using today.
Okay.
Kit. My Warrior Priest converted from the core of it was a plastic Chaos Marauder to get the bulky frame. But then I green stuff loads of stuff on him. My main Witch Hunter captain was the old heavy armored Balton on foot.
Mm-hmm.
So the on foot version of this guy that I happen to have on my desk.
Just happen to have lying around.
He's in my painting queue. So it was the on foot version of him. Then some of the other like junior Witch Hunters were the unarmored farm boy Balton.
Oh yeah,
that sort of thing.
The He-Man version,
which my sort of the one with like the 2 hammers and torn up shirt and stuff.
By the power
my whole the whole reason when I started back in the day was that my Witch Hunter captain basically believed he was Sigmar Reborn, but he was actually just an idiot. But the warrior priest kind of capitalized on it and got people following him.
Okay, so have you ever actually done just a generic human warband?
I myself haven't, but I have a lot of people at the club through them because they're the best default start warband. Because they like in every game system, where like to use extreme examples, the dwarves are always slow, tough as boots. The elves are always really quick, but glass hammers kind of thing.
Yep.
Chaos always do really weird stuff, and they have loads of like extra rules and nonsense, and they've got things going on. And then you get into the more weirder races do weirder things. The humans in any game system are always they're the kind of standard, aren't they? They're like the take all comers. They do a little bit of everything relatively well, but don't tend to push anything broken. So yeah, they're a really good sort of, and also it allows those people at the club have used things like some of the Warcry gangs, chaos ones like the Cabal, things like that. And you can knock up some really good human warbands out of them. You pretty much just any kit these days can be loosely human.
Well, but you could even just use the Empire Free Guild stuff to make like a Reikland warband, for example.
Yeah, or some of the like a Stormcast with some of the like maybe a head swap to a more fantasy helm can make a really good captain in heavy armor.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're pretty solid, and also because they've got the human warband is standard, but there's the 4 sort of city-based specializations for them, which allow you.
Isn't there? Reikland, Middenheim, and Marienburg were in the core book, and then they did Ostland and Avaland.
Yes, that was it. Yeah, I've got the core book thing up in front of me. That's where I went wrong.
Because longer term, my plan is to do an Avaland warband. That's a project for me, for my own enjoyment. With the return of the old world, I'm hoping to do an Empire army of Avaland. And yeah, it seemed appropriate, therefore, to do an Avaland Mordheim warband at some point. To that end, I have laying around in my bits box at the moment a couple of little halfling miniatures, because you can take halflings in an Avaland warband, because they're right next door.
Oh, that was it. Yeah, they were in Avaland with Town Crier 10 and Ostland with Town Crier 11.
But so my plan here is to do a Marienburg warband, because I've got I did Undead for ages back in I said back in my GW days, and before that I did dwarves when I was just playing with friends, and I've even done like the odd Chaos Warband just using gribbly bits from my bits box and some plastic Chaos Warriors and stuff. Again, we're going way back to when White Dwarf first released the rules for Mordheim as a series of articles. I've never done just a generic human warband.
Which is, I mean, it's why I've not done one these days, because I've been playing Mordheim fairly actively. I don't think it's been more than about a 3-year gap that I've not played Mordheim since Mordheim was live and supported. I mean, these past 2 or 3 years, I've probably played at least one game of it every 2 or 3 weeks. And I'm fully running a campaign at the moment, which at some point I'll get into the nitty gritty of that one later on, because there's a lot of custom stuff with that, which is really cool.
Well, should we briefly mention what the different vagaries of the different warbands were? Just for anyone who's forgotten or Needs their memory jogging.
Yeah, so a brief summary. So we mentioned Avalon and Ostland, but I'm going to ignore them for now because they... Oh.
I've just dropped.
So I'm going to ignore Avalon and Ostland for now because they are... Oh.
They're specialist ones that came out in Town Crier later on.
Yeah, they also... They have their own warband roster, so they're, in theory, they're as different from the human mercenaries as the Norse are, for instance.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Whereas the human mercenary warband it's a fixed warband that can be modified one of three ways before you even start putting your warband together, which is really cool, and I like that because it's three warbands in one, crammed into the space of one. So there's Reikland, who one of the guys in our current campaign is playing Reikland. They're a pretty decent one. They push you into a particular style of play because their main thing is skill, because the Reiklanders are known for their range.
Well, it's specifically the marksman as well.
Skill to all of
skill, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's to all their marksmen, which basically pushes you towards maxing out on shooting early on, which is a valid way to play them if that's what you want out of a warband. If you would rather max out in combat early on, you go mid.
That's +1 strength, isn't
it? All their characters start. Yeah, their characters start at strength 4, which is really good starting point. There's also racial max for humans, which I'll get to that in a sec. Which it comes in handy later on. Although as an all-rounder, you can't beat Marienburg,
which is an extra 100 credits.
They're just better than the other two choices, because Middenheim forces you into a combat build, but also only benefits your captain and champions. So only benefits at most 3 models out of your warband. So Middenheim kind of, cool. There was a semi-official Middenheim one that came along later that added in like Volric and things like that. Reikland giving you marksman plus ballistic skill is kind of cool because you can have up to 7 marksmen, but that then basically pushes you into effectively becoming a gun line, which means you kind of don't interact with the game. If you've just got a bunch of dudes sat at the back, keeping all the alleys covered, if you've really stacked into it, you actually don't get playing the game as much. So, whereas Marienburg, you can take what you want. You want some shooty guys, you want some fighty guys, you take them. You could take slightly more. Marienburg they're just a very solid start point. It's 100 extra gold. There's a different starting value than the standard. Because the standard is to start with 500 gold. If there's a different starting value, then it's 20% more, which is really good. Just we did one of our one day as the Albion one. We allow people to start with 1,000 gold. It allowed them to buy stat and skill upgrades from the back of the book as well, to represent that the Warbands of Albion weren't new warbands. They were thematically warbands, been around a bit. Marienburg really benefit there. They are just, they're just a solid.
Well, it doesn't push you into a particular stance of fighting or shooting, and it gives you extra credits to spend on fancy pants stuff for your heroes, or if you really want to hire like an ogre or something, if your GM will let you do that at the start of the campaign. I'm leaving out hired swords, ogres, and everything else in it, and just want to build. If I had received Mordheimers the box for my birthday, what would I build kind of out of the box with maybe a couple of just metal models thrown in there as extras? So I've got. So go on.
I was going to say that's the best way to sort of approach it initially, especially if you're, in essence, sort of, if someone's new to Mordheim. There's all the hired swords. Don't think about them. Play a few games first. Find your jam. Find your play style. Whether you're shooty, fighty, whatever you like out of the game, and then be like, oh, there's an ogre, or oh, there's a halfling scout with a bow, or an elf ranger. There's loads of cool hired swords. There's an insane amount on the website that's got all of them from Town Crier and everything. So
I've got built here now. I've got 8 plastic bodies. I've got a couple of young bloods as well that I can. That one's equipped with a spear. There's not much I can do about that. But
2 metal.
So 2 metal young bloods, just because young bloods are helpful because they're cheap and they gain experience.
Yep.
So what I thought I'd do is if I crack open a calculator, and let's see if we can't crank up a 600-point warband that I can equip these with.
And I'll talk through the sort of my logic with choosing a warband. There's two different schools of warband choice. We've had both come up in our campaigns recently. We had after we played last Wednesday, and after the gaming club night, with a bunch of us probably sat around for about an hour with a beer, discussing the way each of us thinks is the correct way to do Mordheim in terms of warband building, what you start with, what you then play. And it's really interesting to see the various different views on it. But we also all kind of agree with each other at the same time, which is nice. You know, there's not one person going, no, this is the correct maths of how to.
Okay. Well, so I've got a captain. I'm going to have a captain. So I've got a captain, which is literally just
have to have a captain regardless.
It's the Empire Sergeant, plastic sergeant off the Empire Command sprue. So he automatically comes with light armor and a sword. So I'm going to add those on to a basic mercenary captain.
Yep.
So it's 20 gold.
Something to bear in mind with. Yeah.
And 10 gold for the sword.
So something to bear in mind with Mordheim captains. Yeah, everyone has a dagger as standard. So if you also have a dagger, so you have 2 hand weapons.
You have an extra attack, which is like just one attack with a dagger and one with the sword, yeah?
Yeah. So you have your offhand attack with your dagger. If you want to buy them like a second sword or what have you, you can do that sort of thing. But if you buy them one weapon, they've got 2.
So that's with only a sword, that captain is already 90 gold. So that is nearly 60 out of my 600. That's already a big chunk. Now, I do feel with his ballistic skill of 4, like a dueling pistol would be a good way to go. Just because he's Marienburg. It's fancy pants gear. It seems like an appropriate 25 gold to spend on, and a dueling pistol is just better than a pistol from memory.
Yeah, it is better than a pistol, and also you've got the extra 100 gold to play with. Normal warband starting at 500, you're starting at 600, so you can afford to flower out a little bit. Yeah. This is interesting that where I said we talked about at my gaming club recently. We talked about the 2 different styles of warband from the start, and you're very clearly immediately the second style.
Okay, so what's the second style?
One guy so far in the warband, very clear. So the second style is not my style of warband building, but it's the lots of funky gear straight away off the bat. Okay. My style is max your numbers as soon as possible, then get the gear. And my logic for that comes from playing warbands like Witch Hunters, Norse, who have cheap dogs and things like that, where the way I play, I lean into the number game. If you've got one really, really good tooled up guy, if they get surrounded by 3 crap guys, weight of dice takes over. If you've got 3 guys with nothing more than a pair of daggers just going stab, 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 you can only make so many saves. You can only luck your way out of certain things. And then once you get knocked down, it's very easy for a third person to go stab and just deal with you completely. But the counterpoint is if you've got a decent amount of gear, you can tend to shrug off a bit of this, a bit of that. If you've got a helmet, you ignore a bit of knockdown or a bit of stun, sorry. So there is sort of both sides of it. Probably a balance somewhere in between. It's the right sort of thing. So making your captain a bit fancy and maybe your champions, and then giving everyone else just pointy sticks.
Well, I'm going for
it's probably sort of balance.
So left hand, so right hand, I've gone with the extended pistol arm from the Free Company kit, and then because he's already got a sword strapped around a baldric on his waist, I've gone for the armored left arm that came on the command upgrade sprue, as if he's basically to go with his light armor. He's not fully armored. He's got unarmored legs. He's got a bare right arm for the pistol, but his left arm is kind of almost like for it's a panzer hand. Basically, it's that thing of having one side of your body armored so that you can physically use that side of your body as a shield. Yeah,
so it sort of turns into things. Yeah,
I mean, Dadu, what are the benefits of shields in Mordheim?
And so shields are +1 save. A lot of people, my club and events included, have the house rule that they have the old fantasy parry bonus as well.
Okay.
So if you use them with a sword, axe, hammer, a hand weapon, then you get an extra +1 save.
How many points is a shield? A shield's only 5 gold. I think
just
a
giving
shield.
+1 save, sacrifice.
It means that with light armor and a shield, he's got a 5 up save.
If you've got, and 4 up if you have the parry house rule, which is quite good. And if you're putting light armor on them, it's then worth putting a shield on, because a 6+ save in Mordheim doesn't really mean a lot.
No.
It's where it comes back to the choice of style of warband. With mine being, so your max size is 15 models. The first thing I would do is pick the 15 models, then I'd go through and put all their gear on. So I'd literally start with them all in their pants, and then see what gear I can afford with what money's left.
So you go for as many bodies as possible, which is the other play style you're talking about then.
So I'd hit so Human Warband, max size 15. I'd go, hit 15, go from there. Whereas some people,
if I hit 10 on this.
So some of the guys at our thing go with, they'll dive in, get some tooled up fellas and a few guys to pad the numbers, and then they will expand as they find some weird stuff and get through the first couple of games. Because the lower your numbers, the more money you can spend with zone 4. So there is genuine this is the wrong word for a 20-year-old game.
Pros and cons.
But there's a semblance of that's what I was after. There's a semblance of logic to both ways around. There's no truly correct way. Which is just
trying to decide the important thing of which head with the ridiculously big hat am I going to pick. And I think I'm just going to see how it looks, but I think I may have found the right one for mine. So there's 2 heads with ridiculous hats with massive feathers, which again, for Marienburg, feels eminently appropriate.
It's got to be the most ostentatious, the feather size of a man.
Well, one's got 2 feathers, one's got 3 feathers. The one with 3 feathers is an older looking face with a beard and a scowl, whereas the one with 2 feathers is kind of a younger face, glaring a little bit, baring his teeth. And I was going to go with the glaring and baring his teeth one, because I thought, he's got, big armored shoulder. It feels kind of rough and tough and fighty. But then I looked at it and went, but in the hand, his pose is very much hand on his sword pommel, gun extended. And as I approach my 40th birthday, I am slightly starting to feel the older guy with the beard and the scowly face and the wrinkles around his eyes. So I think, it's going to be old guy with 3 feathers over young shouty guy with 2.
Well, young shouty guy could always be one of your 2 champions.
Yeah, that's another thing I've got to factor in. Whether can I afford? How many champions can I afford?
So this then comes back to one thing that pretty much all of us agreed on, whichever of the 2 list building styles we had. My style of max out your numbers and then see what money you've got left for gear. So you start with some guys with just daggers, and if they make it through, they get a sword. Mm-hmm. Or you go with the route which you sort of from the start. Both sides of us agreed on is however many you're able to start with them.
Okay, so start with the maximum champions, heroes, young bloods, and etc.
Yep. Because and I'll explain it for
please do.
Anyone who might not be as familiar with Wartime. Basically, when you come to search for gold and stuff at the end of the game, only your hero didn't get taken out of action get to go and look for gold. So if you've only got 3 heroes in your warband, also if they're the ones with the cool kit and the cool weapons, they're going to be in a fight. Odds are they're getting taken out of action during the game. But even if they do survive, rolling 3 dice to look for things. If you've got 5, the max heroes you can ever have is 6. So if you start with 5, even if 2 get taken out, you're still rolling 3 to find more gold going down the line. Which means you could afford to have some of your fighty ones be fighty.
That also, makes sense.
If you're rolling loads of look for gold, your everyone who's not heroes, all your henchmen, they're there to do the stuff, but also to support your characters. Because if all your henchmen survive and none of your characters, you get 0 gold. which means you can't grow your warband. Even if everyone survives their injury rolls, you can't get any extra gear, you can't get anything more. So the one we agreed on between the two styles is however many heroes your warband is able to take.
Okay. Well, I've equipped one young blood with a spear, exactly as the metal model comes with, and I'm just looking for. I think there's a bare hand somewhere. It's a bare right hand in particular I'm looking for, because the other one already has a knife in his left hand. No, that's a bare left hand. Please tell me someone somewhere's got an empty right hand that I can use. No, everyone in Mordheim appears to be left-handed.
Yeah, it's one of the few good hits where there was a lot of left-handed weapons in general. As a lefty, I grew up with the old fantasy stuff where every single model was right-handed, and I was like, no, I want someone to hold stuff in their left hand. Now,
just thinking, how many points is a club? Because clubs were pretty good, weren't they?
Clubs are not terrible. Yeah, clubs are not on your hero list. Interesting.
I think they go under the heading of mace, which is 3.
Oh, mace / club, isn't it? It's just called mace in the human one, which is 3. Yeah, okay, mace is they're not terrible, and they're only 3 gold.
Well, and it's a right.
So one young blood with a spear, and
one with a knife and a club.
So one with a knife and a club, and one with a spear. Nice and simple, bright and breezy young blood. Because they'll get XP nice and quickly.
Just going to see if there's a better club.
Oh, they are
really weird. No, they're only weapon skill and ballistic skill 2, so you'd never give them like a ranged weapon or anything.
But then also, with them being only 15 crowns to hire,
yeah, I suppose they're cheap.
It's very much. You treat them with the attitude of what's his name from Rocky? If he dies, he dies.
Drago.
Yeah, Ivan Drago. Treat them with attitude. Like don't but like they get fancy gear if they stick around. If they get up on level ups.
What you're saying is don't be precious about them. Is what you're saying.
Yeah, like if you're going to give your captain some toys, be precious about him. Your champions, give him a couple of toys, be precious about them. Your young ones, they're kind of there to pad out the numbers for your heroes until potentially one of your marksmen or swordsmen gets a hero upgrade instead.
The fantasy upgrade sprue does have some bare right arms. So I'm just trying out. Well, not bare, an empty. I think this one's quite cool. This one, he's got essentially a drumstick. I can take the drumstick off and replace it with the club, I think. Where'd that club hand go? I've lost it on my bits box. It's on the table in front of me a minute ago. How do I lose a club?
Just pinged it away already.
It's right there. There we are. Just see. But that means he can have a fancy ruffled sleeve, like he's somebody's nephew who's been given this job out of nepotism.
Yeah, that works.
Who's that? Oh, that's Colin. Yeah.
How's he managed to get into the leaders of the gang? Oh, his dad runs that shop down in Marienburg.
He almost looks better without the club, to be honest, just with a bare hand, because he's got that for a knife in the left hand and the right one swung across like he's going ha ha. So I can take that club off.
Yeah.
Well, if I got 3 points left at the end, then I'll model the club onto him. So I'm on 160 gold spent so far, and I've got a hero, a leader, and 2 young whippersnappers.
Cool.
So
that's not too bad.
Champions, you said.
Next. Tries in both champions, yeah.
So they're 35
simply because that puts you at your max 5 heroes.
Is there a limit that you have to have more
skill 4 versus skill 3
than heroes or anything like that?
There thankfully is not. Is that Munda?
I think it may have been Munda that had a thing where you couldn't have.
In Mordheim, you can do what you want.
Okay, so I'm going to go with. I've really got my eye on this great sword model. Double-handed weapons. What do we think?
Yeah, double-handed weapons. So initially, to start with, they are not superb. I'm just looking at what's. Oh, you can't take strength skills. Ooh. If you can take strength skills, you then get there's a skill called Strongman. So double-handed weapons +2 strength, but always strike last. Like in Old Fantasy.
Yeah.
But you can get a Strongman skill which ignores the strike last bonus or penalty, which means that you're then just +2 strength, which is great. But in a Marienburger Warband, the only person who gets the strength bonus skills are your captains. Annoyingly.
So, in many respects, it would have been better if I'd armed the captain with the great sword.
With hindsight,
Hindsight
should have looked at your. It is.
Let me just have a look and see what would he look like with the. He'd look so good with the double-handed sword as well. Is the problem?
There is always the option.
Sorry, go on. There is the option for what?
The potential is down the line that you, if you really want to go with a great sword, you can potentially almost build one and just effectively keep them in your back pocket when you get a lad's got talent on someone. Because your swordsman or warrior, if they get a lad's got talent upgrade when they get a little bit of experience, that makes them into a hero. When a henchman becomes a hero, for their skill sets, you get to pick any 2 sets of skills from combat, shooting, academic, strength, or speed. Any 2 that are available to any of your warband characters. So like the possessed, none of them have shooting skills. So even if you get a lad's got talent, you cannot take shooting skills. But because Marienburg, your captain has access to all 5 skill categories, which means when you get a lad's got talent, you can pick strength skills.
So in actual fact, I would probably be better putting the great sword on one of my swordsmen and maybe giving the champion like a halberd or something.
Yes, that would work quite well.
Cool. Thank you very much. That's excellent advice. I shall keep that great sword on the table for the minute. He will become one of the swordsmen in a minute. I've got a halberd right here. So let's give him a halberd. Should go for one of the dudes in the coat, I think.
Yep, so a halberd on one of the shell.
Let's just see. Which dude in the coat
and then
look with the halberd?
Halberd's pretty solid. Spear's genuinely not a bad shout on a champion. Because Spear lets you strike first even when charged, which is pretty handy.
Okay. The only thing is, I don't think the Free Company sprue came with a spear. No, it didn't. No, it wasn't a spearman. No spearman. So I think what I'm going to do is, this champion's going to have a halberd. I'm almost thinking that maybe the champions are almost like... So a narrative is slowly forming in my head for this warband. Marienburg, of course, being a hive of mercenaries and sell swords and everything for sale for the highest bidder. I'm wondering if maybe this is a mercenary company paymaster who, due to a horse suddenly coming last at the wrong moment, lost the company pay chest and has gone to Mordheim to try and recoup the lost funds before the rest of the sort of Dogs of War army notice and come after his head.
That's a solid narrative. Yep. So that gives you your captain is the paymaster in essence.
And the champions,
and the 2 champions are effectively his bodyguards.
Exactly, that's it. And from memory, the Dogs of War list, mercenary bodyguards came with halberds.
Halberds, yeah.
So
back in good old 5th edition.
2 champions with halberds, I think. And what I might just do is, I've got here a Sisters of Battle halberd, which I would take the head off and swap the head on this halberd.
Oh, is that the really nice fleur-de-lis blade one?
Yeah, the fleur-de-lis one.
Yeah.
So to make them look each look a little bit different, I shall stick the fleur-de-lis halberd head on this halberd, and that will make the 2 champions look slightly different. Just trying to cut into my thumb there. Try and get the head flush to glue this onto. So one of the things I like about the old plastic kits is everything can just be chopped and changed to make something that, you know, fits whatever you want.
Yeah. Yeah, like I was just saying with the sort of plastic kit back in the day where they used to, you know, straight like lines down the sides and the like dome neck piece and things, it was much easier to chop and swap.
Yeah, exactly. To make something that was a little bit more
newer to the game. Yeah, if you were less experienced, it was still very good, very easy to do a little bit of converting. Whereas now you still can now. In fact, with more kits being made of plastic, you can, but it just requires an extra level of almost skill, doesn't it? You have to be more with chopping bits apart rather than just going use different arms.
Yeah, 2 halberds, and then so I now need some left arms that aren't holding anything. For which we established, I think, that there are quite a few left arms that aren't holding anything somewhere in here. Yep, there's one. And I might go for the other left arm with like a knife or something in it. Oh no, let's go with that one. Knife held down low by his side. It's a backup piece.
Yeah. That's only 5 characters. Then we get on to the actual sort of, for lack of a better word,
mooks.
You want your warband to play. You know, because you can lean into marksman, like 7 marksmen, but if you're doing that with you buy more, say, crossbows each or whatever, that gets stag pricey. You can take 5 swordsmen, they're not cheap, and you can give them all cool swords, or you can just take a bunch of goofball warriors with basically nothing. You can kind of, it's there where you sort of just to get into how you actually want the warband to play. I'm just looking at the marked equipment list right now. I didn't realise if you really wanted to, you can take a Hochland as starting equipment.
Really, a Hochland long rifle?
It's 200 gold, so probably not.
No, I mean even
because you can only take.
Yeah, I mean, you could take a handgun for 35. That might just about be doable. I could probably manage a handgun. I don't think I can manage a Hochland long rifle.
Yeah, the rifle, that's nuts. That's really cool. It is, however, hilariously only on marksman.
So your heroes can't take it.
So, but the fact, no, which means you're going to get any decent skills using a Hochland long rifle. You're going to have some plucky little guy being like, "I got this."
Look what I got for Hogswatch Night.
Yeah, like also that really doesn't fit the vibe of what you said about the crap we've lost the pace. Like,
no, exactly. It's I think it's crossbows, because again, if I'm playing into the kind of the mercenary company, Tylean's crossbows fits the kind of the vibe. And
if you're going with that sort of crossbows, a few swordsmen with like a sword and dagger list of fellows, and then a bunch of warriors, kind of feels right.
I think one swordsman's going to be the guy with the great sword, and then I think maybe duelists with kind of sword and dagger feels like a good vibe. And let me see. I've got the sword. Let me glue this arm on. Hang on. Get your arm on there. Cool. There you go.
So then the other bit we get to with henchmen, which is quite interesting, and it catches a lot of people off guard when they're new to Mordheim. It's henchmen you buy in groups, but they can be groups of 1 model or up to 5.
What is the benefit of buying them in a group of 1 model?
A group of 1 model, there is a mechanical which it kind of leans almost into that like min-maxing metagame type of thing, where if you have loads of henchman groups of 1 model, you are going to be rolling more times on the XP table, so you're more likely to much more quickly get a lad's got talent.
Ah, okay. So it increases your odds of getting skills.
It increases your odds of one of them becoming a hero to round out to your maximum 6 heroes.
What about the benefit of taking them in groups?
So the benefit of taking them in groups is if you have a henchman group. Let's go with a marksman group. If you have a marksman where they've gained some XP, so for henchmen it's 2 XP. They gain a skill up, and then the next one is I think 4, and there's that sort of thing. So when they've had 2 XP, they gain a skill up. Now that might not be that sort of talent, but it might be +1 ballistic skill.
Okay, but they would all get it then.
The advantage of having the group gets it, and the advantage of a group of henchmen, say 3 marksmen, who happen to do good upgrades like +1 ballistic skill, and that's really good to have on marksman. If one of them gets killed in a game, you roll an injury table and you roll a 1 and 2, and they are permanently dead, scratched off your roster, the group stays, and you can buy new people into a group.
So they don't lose that XP.
One guy, well, then the group's gone if they don't.
That makes a lot of sense.
So if you have a single marksman, who's ballistic skill 4, he gets taken it. Yeah. So there is. I tend to go groups of 2.
Okay.
Because it lets you have lots of little pairs of guys with matching kit, which also, when you've only got about 12 to 20 models tops, having little guys with pair matching gear. So the other thing is, group, everyone in the henchman group has to have the same gear. So if you have a group of marksmen with crossbows, then every one of them has to have a crossbow. You can't have one with a handgun. One with a handgun would have to be a separate marksman group.
Okay, so if I want crossbows, I reckon 2 crossbowmen is a good shout.
Yeah. So yeah, I tend to play with paired guys because it gives, from a mechanics point of view, it gives you as close to the advantage of as possible to hero upgrade, whilst also having a bit of the advantage of maintaining the stat upgrades and stuff you need. It sort of fits in there, and also quite a lot of the narrative that like each henchman group is, a pair of brothers or comrades who fought before and somewhere else, and they've found their way into whatever warband they're in, and that kind of works quite well across most themes. I did it with my notes. Every henchman was 2 in the group because they were, and he called me the sons of this or the sons of that, and they were all. It was basically 2 henchmen for each character, and they were just then their sons or daughters.
Family outing.
Yeah, it kind of led into the Norse vibe.
Okay, well, a crossbowman is.
But yeah, so
marksman with the crossbow is basically 50 gold, so that's 2 crossbowmen is 100 gold.
Yeah,
and I've just added those on.
Where does that leave us?
Well, I've added those on, and I've added that sword, that lone swordsman with a great sword. I've added him, which means that at the moment I am on 400 before I add any swordsman, aside from that great sword dude. So the duelists call it.
So you still got 200 to play with.
Yeah,
that's not too bad at all.
No, I think it's pretty good. You never know, I might yet get to add a lone marksman with a handgun. Look what I got for Christmas.
Yeah. I mean, a handgun's pretty solid. Handguns are their strength 4, fire every other turn. But they are an extra -1 save. So they negate a 5-up save. And saves better than 4+. So negating 2 points of a 4+ save is huge. Whereas crossbows are strength 4. So they only negate 1 point of save. But crossbows are move or fire. I think handguns are as well, but because handguns are fire every other turn, you fire it, then you move. You fire it, then you move.
Well, adding 2 swordsmen in with just a sword and a knife each, obviously the knife being free, puts me on 490. So I've still got 110 left to play with.
Yeah, that little Marienburg bonus is lovely. So I'd almost be tempted to say it, because we sort of hinted at your captain being the one he's got a bit of gear going on. He's a bit special. It would almost, I know, he said he had a hat, not a helmet, but it would almost be worth, equipment wise, the hat being a helmet, because helmets are quite handy.
How many points would a helmet set me back?
Helmets are only 10 points.
Okay. Spare 10.
It's not worth putting them on everyone. They're not really worth it on the henchmen, that sort of thing. But they're on your characters, guys you want to keep alive. They're a better tool than armor for keeping a character alive.
It's a very fancy hat, so clearly he's reinforced it.
Yeah, made of an old dinner or something. But so weirdly, helmets are far better at keeping you alive in more time than armor.
Because they avoid you getting stunned or something, don't they?
Yes. So armor, there's ways to get a 3-up save, but it's very, very rare. 4-uppers tend to be the good level of save in Mordheim.
I mean, it's a dwarven type thing, isn't it? It's like getting Gromril and...
Yeah. Early campaign's not going to be much of it, but once you get into a mid-late campaign, the human max stat line strength is strength 4. Give them a great weapon, they're strength 6. You tend to end up with every warband having at least 2 dudes who are cracking at that strength, which then starts to ignore all your heavy armors. And things like I said earlier on, the handgun being strength 4 with an extra -1 to it negates that. Also, if you get to doing critical damage to people, which is if you roll a 6 to wound, you then roll on the critical, and most of the critical tables just ignore saves, regardless. Whereas a helmet is after the fact of being wounded. If you are then stunned by that on a 4+, no, you're not. And instead of stunned, you're just knocked down. So only 10 gold, helmets are worth it on characters around.
So I guess at the moment, my warband is kind of a generalist warband, because I've got a couple of duelists, a couple of crossbowmen, some bodyguards for that extra strength with the halberd, but I don't yet have a focus. And I suppose with that last 100, then that's where the shift
lean into one side.
Yeah, and it's really a question, I suppose, of I could go an extra couple of swordsmen, so I could do 2 more swordsmen with swords, and maybe I could give them bucklers. I mean, that could be quite cool, sword and buckler for 2 further duelists, because they're 5 gold, and buckler gives you an extra parry, I think, doesn't it?
Yes, yeah.
Or the alternative is I can just go full on marksman with a handgun. That's 25 plus 35, so that is 60.
Which leaves 40.
It would leave me 40. Couldn't take a second one of those.
No, you could squeeze a warrior in, or a swordsman with another sword and dagger swordsman.
I could make a 3rd sword and dagger swordsman. I could have a unit of 3 duelists. That could be quite cool. Let me just check. I've done the 2 swordsmen so far, both as the guys wearing the coats. Do I have a 3rd body wearing a coat? Is the question. I think I've got one around here somewhere. No? I do.
I mean, so the generalist vibe that you mentioned there kind of harks back to what we said right at the start about the choice between the 3 types of human mercenary ones, whereas Reikland are intended to build shooty, Middenheim are intended to build fighty, Marienburg can kind of do what they want. They just get the extra cash. So we've kind of demonstrated that in practice by accident.
One final thought is marksman with a bow. No, at that point I'd be better off just doing a marksman with 2 more marksmen with crossbow. Shooty or fighty, shooty or fighty. 1 more marksman with a crossbow would be 50, and then 1 more swordsman with would be 45, which would leave me 5 spare. At which point, what can I spend that 5 on? Do I have an axe kicking around amongst these spools? Yes, I do. Would the one currently swanking around with just a knife look good with an axe? No, I really do like that. He's just swanking around with, look at me and my fancy. That fancy sleeve doesn't look right. Let's see what happens if I give him an axe.
So part of what I'd lean towards would be, what was it you were saying? Another marksman with crossbow, which is 50, leaves you with 50.
Yeah, which would be, I could basically do a unit of 3 crossbowmen and a unit of 3 swordsmen.
Yeah.
And I'm just upgrading the young blood to have an axe.
Yeah. Or with the extra 50, you could buy just 2 human warriors and just leave them with just a dagger and just be like, good luck, kiddo. And then if they survive game 1 and you make even 10 gold, you can be like, here you go, lads.
Here's the spoils. No, the gold is getting put in the pay chest to help refill the pay chest before Borgio the Besieger comes for our thumbs.
So the other bit to look at is, at the moment, what you've got: mercenary cap. I'm going to count it on my hand. Mercenary captain, 2 champions, 2 young bloods, 5 characters. Then is it 2 marksmen and the great weapon swordsman, and then 2 normal swords at the moment. So 10 models total.
Yeah.
But this is before with still 100 gold left.
Yeah.
So this is I mean, I'm in favor of my style of list building, which is the numbers. It's being aware of the breakpoint. So you don't take route tests until you've lost 25%, which also means you cannot choose to leave until you've lost 25%. And in certain scenarios, especially early campaign, it's quite often a point where you just go, whoops, bye, and you hit your route test and you just leave. You don't stick around till the bitter end, because you'll lose loads of your dudes and then you won't make the money to make them back. You have to. The game does kind of benefit from you occasionally just going like, oh, this isn't working, and just running off.
I would stay and fight, but I suddenly remembered I left the oven on.
Yeah, I left the campfire on. Crap. So at the moment you're at 10. So going up to 12 doesn't change your breakpoint, because breakpoint is 25%. So you'd lose losing 3 models. If you kick to 13, it's then a breakpoint of losing 4. So that 1 tick from 12 to 13 actually becomes detrimental.
I can see what you're saying. It would seem like, what's the line from Lord of the Rings? It would seem like logic, except for the words in my heart, which is, I really quite like the idea of I'm bringing 3 duelists from the company and 3 crossbowmen from the mercenary company, who are presumably here to watch over and make sure that the money gets put back.
I realise I have also just counter-argued against my own logic of maxing out your warband size as soon as possible. But it's both sides of it. So if you're at 13, at least then, as long as you don't take too many permanent casualties after a game or 2, you can hire an extra 2 guys, hit your maximum allowed warband size at 15 as soon as possible. Because if you're at 13, you may as well get up to 15.
But on the other hand, if I make enough gold to hire, I mean, it's 25 for a warrior. If I make 25, I can hire a warrior fairly early on, can't I?
Yeah. So that's the thing. Yeah. Start with some of your funky dudes, and as long as the dice are kind to you, with your casualties and stuff, and you don't get brutalized, then sink some of your early gold into just some cheap warriors to round your warband size up to that sweet spot of 15.
Local talent that have been hired once we arrive at the City of the Damned.
Yeah, hired possibly against their will, depending on the moral standpoint of your mercenary leader.
You work for Senor Fiducci now.
What's a little bit of press gang in between friends?
Yeah.
So yeah, then that would put you like after a game or 2 potentially up to 15. Which whenever I build a warband from scratch these days, what I tend to do is look at what the max warband size is, and I will build that many, along with a couple of variants. So I just put together for the current campaign we're running, which is set in Lustria. I put together a Lisman Warband, but when I put it together from scratch, I looked at what's the maximum number of Saurus I can possibly take. What's the maximum number of skinks I could take? The maximum Warband size was 20, but it was like the maximum skinks I could run was, in theory, something like 16, maybe even 17. The maximum Saurus was something like 5 due to some became characters and stuff. And then also they can take a Croxigore and then the characters. So I ended up making about 30 models for a maximum size 20 Warband, but it meant I'm future-proofed with them. Like whatever I decide to add in, whatever sort of things I find, I basically can just switch around skins, switch around loadouts.
To make the perfect Warband.
Yeah, because I painted them all in one go, because I was also leading into this Lustria campaign, because I'm running it, I painted a load of critters and monsters for the scenarios we've got homebrewed.
Okay.
That have things like, there can be literally a Stegodon turn up.
Stegodon Stampede!
So I had to paint. So yeah, I had to get all the beasties sorted and painted as well. So it was effectively painting like a Stark Collecting's worth of miniatures to play Mordheim. So slightly tangent from your Mordheim, but for your 5th ed event, I'm doing an army based on a silly color scheme I did for 4 models for Underworlds. Doing the proper 90s style.
Red and green.
Yeah, red and green, goblin green bases. I did the 4 models from Underworlds to prove a point. And then, yeah, agreed to go to a 5th ed event. So I'm like, cool, I'm going to do a whole army like that. Well, that's cool, interesting bit from Marienburg that I've kind of just re-noticed now. As well as the 100 extra gold. Once you're into the campaign, I get +1 bonus finding rare items, which is actually really cool.
That's very useful.
That's very useful. Because a lot of rare stuff isn't that rare, but it's like rare 7, rare 6. So by making that down a notch, but it just becomes, yeah, really handy.
Right, well, here we go. I have finished then my Marienburger Warband. They're all built. They just need spray undercoating and painting.
Cool. Have you got a colour scheme in mind at the moment? Are you going Trad Marienburg or?
Well, Trad Marienburg is the red, yellow, and blue. I don't know. I might go kind of a Tylean colour scheme on them. So maybe I'll do like red, white, and green. Red, white, and green or something. That might look quite cool.
I mean, that's one of the beauties of Mordheim as well. Like, you know, mechanics wise, you're playing Marienburg, but once you get your Warband put together, there's nothing about that that is explicitly Marienburg. So you can just go, they're just humans. Like, it's like, especially with the Human Warband. Some of the other ones are, you know, obviously cult possessed. They're chaos gribbly monsters. You're stuck with that. Humans is humans. And you can be really freeform with Mordheim, and it's wonderful. We've had some at our campaign days and our event days and our campaigns. We've had some great counts as warbands turn up. Some weird converted things and stuff. Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for joining me, Lee. And thanks for helping me work out what to put in this Marienburger Warband. Once I've got them painted up, I will have to come on down to the Bristol Gaming Collective and give you a game of Mordheim with them.
Yeah, it's going to incentivize me to make sure we get another event up soon.
Definitely. No, don't count on me getting these painted anytime soon. I've still got that Bretonian army to finish painting.
You'll be fine. It's like, what, 12 models? Easy peasy.
12 models, yeah. I've got, like, at this point, 6 Grail Knights, the Damsel, 1 Questing Knight, so that's 8. The Pegasus Duke, 9, and then 8 squires to paint. So I've got basically, I can't do maths, 17 models left to paint for the end of the month. You really wouldn't think that's that much. I am worried about whether I'm going to get those done or not in time. We shall see. But yeah, thank you very much for joining me. I will hopefully invite Lee back in the near future for another one of these where we do the Skaven Warband that you get in the starter box. And then I'll have 2 of the kind of the starter box forces built up. And yeah, we'll see how that goes. So
that's a good shout, yeah.
Quick nod to Lee to brush up on his Skaven knowledge in the meantime.
Yeah. I know Skaven mostly from being on the receiving end of them a lot, so
Excellent. That's
I'm
sometimes
more
the best
aware
way
of
to
them than
learn.
anything else. Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks for
Cool.
watching, everyone. We will catch you again another time. In the meantime, bye for now.